So now we come to the most important aspect of Krishnaji's teachings, which is the meditation he talks about. And he says, life without meditation is a barren life. It doesn't have much life in it, or not much living quality. And yet he says that a deliberate conscious meditation is no meditation at all. So he really puts you in a fix as to what you should do in order to meditate. Because whatever you do, he will say that is not meditation. And he says life without meditation is barren. So you have to meditate, but then you don't know what exactly you are supposed to do. So there are various aspects to this meditation. There is one talk which Krishnaji gave on meditation itself. And in that talk, instead of telling you what is meditation, he kept on talking about what is the requirement for meditation. That means in order to meditate, what you are required to do. And after telling all that, he still doesn't tell you what is meditation, but whatever he has asked you to do as the requirement, he says that is part of the meditation. So he says, before you are able to meditate, you have to put your house in order. Now, house doesn't mean the physical house where you live, but the house is within you, what you are within yourself, that house. And there, if there is a lot of agitation, lot of unrest, lot of conflict, then naturally the house is in disorder, and therefore you cannot meditate. Because for meditation, a completely quiet mind is required, a still mind. And when it is agitated, then naturally you can't meditate. So does that mean that you have to now start about bringing order in your day-to-day life? So usually what happens is that a person decides what he has to do in order to bring order in his day-to-day life. So maybe he ends up with a timetable that he will wake up at such and such time, then he will do this yoga, then he will attend to this, that, and then he will do these things. So everything nicely timetabled, and then he tries to follow that timetable. And if he is able to follow, he feels that he has established order in his life. But is that really order? So Krishnaji says that any pattern imposed by you on yourself will bring disorder only. It's not an order. It is just a confirmation to the pattern. So today you have accepted some pattern which you consider as order. Tomorrow you may discard that pattern and you may accept some other pattern and consider that as the order. So whatever you considered as order before now becomes disorder, and then something else you take as order, and it goes on. So that is not the way to go about establishing order. But he says that if you can find out what is creating disorder in your life, then if you can eliminate those factors which create disorder in your life, then order will be naturally there. So, order actually is the complete absence of disorder. All the disorder creating elements having worked out, then there is natural order. So, there the disorder creating elements are not to be got rid of through suppression or through justification or rationalization, but freedom, as Krishnamurti says, which is the very basic statement that freedom is possible only through understanding. So, if you want to have freedom from these disorder creating elements, which means that you have to understand these elements, which means that you have to observe how these elements function, how they bring disorder in your life, and out of that understanding the action will emerge which will end these elements. And then in the absence of these disorder creating elements, the order is established. So, that order will not be according to what I consider as order or according to what somebody else considers as order, because that order is not the product of any regime, any pattern indicated, discussed, shown by any tradition, any scripture or by any authority, including your own authority. So, therefore, that order is completely natural. It has come about on its own, and therefore, it is part of that natural order. And when it is natural order, it is undisturbable. I mean, nothing can destroy it. You can only hide it by the disorder you create in your life, but you cannot destroy the natural order. It is there. So, when that kind of order is established, then meditation is possible. Without that, it is not possible. So, he gives lots of emphasis on putting your house in order, and without that the meditation not possible. Now, we live our daily life with inattention. I mean, we are more inattentive than attentive, and since we are living our life inattentively, we are creating a lot of disorder within ourselves, in our brain, because without attention things are not taken to their logical end. Lots of things keep on pending, lots of psychological reactions not yet thoroughly gone through or understood. So, they remain, and in fact, whatever we are doing in our day-to-day life without attention, that remains incomplete, and therefore brain becomes disorderly, because it has so many things to do and there is quite a lot of confusion. The priorities are also, they go wrong. So, when the brain is in such disorder, naturally it cannot meditate, because for meditation a complete order is required. So, when do you create order in your brain? Now, as long as you are awake, you are busy creating disorder. So, the brain doesn't have any chance to establish order there. It is waiting. The brain needs order in order to function normally, naturally, and it has no chance to establish order when you are awake, because the disorder creating process is on. So, the brain gets its chance when you are asleep. So, when you are asleep, the brain works on itself, goes about establishing order in itself, and if it is able to establish complete order, then when you wake up, you feel very fresh, you feel that you slept well. If it is not able to establish complete order, but partial order, you feel that you didn't sleep well, but you slept. And if it is not able to establish any order, which means that the state of the brain is same after waking up as it was before going to sleep. So in that case, you feel that you didn't sleep at all. You had a sleepless night because the brain hasn't been able to establish any order there. And so, in trying to establish order in the brain gives rise to dreams. So, we have all kinds of dreams, weird dreams and so on. But if you live your day-to-day life in attentively or in attention, that means live attentively your day-to-day life, which means that whatever that you are doing, you do it attentively. Whatever is happening to you within yourself, you pay attention to it, so that you complete things, you finish things then and there only. So which means that you are not creating any disorder in your brain. And so your brain is orderly during waking hours. So naturally during the sleep, brain does not have to do anything to establish order, because order is already there. So the brain doesn't have to do any work to establish order. So in that situation, then the brain becomes very sensitive. Then it is open to a completely different dimension. Then it is as if the life is completely reflected in the brain as it is. And in fact, that is the right ground for meditation happening. So you will find that in Krishnamurti, particularly when you read his notebook, there he is describing that meditation began in sleep. So when the body was asleep, the meditation began, and it continued even after the body woke up, and it continued for a few hours, and then it ended. So most of the time his meditation began during the sleep and continued in waking hours. So you can see how important the sleep is and how important it is to live our day-to-day life with attention, because without that meditation is not possible. So Krishnaji had these kinds of meditations. These were not deliberate, these were not conscious, these were not brought about with the desire to meditate and so on, but they just happened because the brain was in total order. And towards the end of 70s, that means late 70s and just beginning of 80s, say 77, 78, this state of meditation during sleep, they intensified in him, and he had more nights waking up in the state of meditation. And in 1979 November, when he was at Rishi Valley, he, in the state of meditation, he sensed that he reached the source of all energy. And then that was in November 79, and then in February 1980, he described that experience to Mary Zimbalist, who wrote it down, and you can read about it in his biography. The name of the chapter itself is The Source of All Energy. So you can read the description there. And there he said that, was it an illusion? Was it an idea? or was it a self-deception? So he said no. What's the proof? Then he says that for such things the proof is not required, they are self-evident. Because if that depends on proof, then the proof becomes more important than that thing. And so you cannot talk about proof, but it is self-evident, and the mind is in such a state that the deception is not possible. So the source of all energy, that is what he said he reached. And from that point onwards, you will find that in most of his talks, he is talking about this energy and the importance of energy. In fact, in 1980, the following year, he had those dialogues with David Bohm, which were titled as The Ending of Time. And in those dialogues, he is talking more about energy and the importance of energy, the significance of it, and so on. And energy is really very important, because nothing is possible without energy. You have to have energy to do anything. When you talk about action, it means energy. Without energy, the action is not possible. So, do we have energy in our life? So, is there energy in our observation? You want to observe something. Now, is there an energy in that observation, or the observation is happening casually? Means not much energy. So, if you observe casually, then no change happens out of that observation. It just the thinking that happens. But even in our thinking, there isn't much energy. Our thinking is also very casual. It is vague, not clear. In fact, they say that the thought power is not to be underestimated. Even thought has tremendous power, but we have not discovered it yet. But it is good that we have not discovered it yet, otherwise we would have harmed ourselves, because we don't know how to think, how to think rightly. Most of our thoughts are self-centered, and therefore we are likely to harm ourselves and others if we can realize the power of thinking. But anyway, the energy is the most important factor, and as we have said in the last session, that religion is to gather all your energy. So, which means that as you live your day-to-day life, are you wasting the energy? If you are wasting your energy, then you don't have energy left to do what you consider as important. So then you don't have enough energy to inquire. You don't have enough energy to pursue your interests. And energy is such a thing, you cannot get it from anywhere. Nobody can give it to you. You have to derive it from your own life. And there, unless you spend your energy in a useful way and do not waste it, you cannot gather energy at all. Nature is very stingy as far as energy is concerned. It always does things where the minimum energy is used. It doesn't squander the energy. And you will find in nature that most of the things happen in the direction of the minimum energy. So, one has to derive energy from one's own life and then utilize that energy for the inquiry or for whatever it is. Even meditation is not possible without energy, because when the house is in disorder, there is no energy, it's all scattered. There is no gathering of energy, and therefore meditation is also not possible. It's only when the house is in total order that there is the ample energy that is available. And then the meditation is possible. So Krishnaji talks about cosmos as the total order. And when your life is naturally orderly, that means order not created by thought, but order because the disorder creating elements are absent. So that order then is the part of that cosmic order. Then it is not your personal order or order in your personal life, but rather you as a human being become or is part of that cosmic order. And then all that energy then becomes available to you. So then you will sense the abundance of energy. Never any shortage, never any want of energy. And with that abundance of energy, then anything is possible. Miracles can happen with that kind of energy. I mean, a person just has to say the energy of observation, right? Now, if you are able to observe with that full energy, then if something is observed as wrong, then it is finished then and there only. You don't have to do anything about it. It simply cannot stand itself against that energy. And we have examples of that in history and also in case of Krishnaji, that when he observed, things changed. Complete change happening. The healing is actually based on energy. The energy heals. Is it okay? The sound? Yeah. The energy heals. And Krishnaji had a tremendous healing quality or healing energy. And in his presence, a lot of people got healed. He didn't publicize it, he didn't want it to be publicized, otherwise people would have come to him for healing and not for his teachings. So the teaching was far more important for him, because if people could understand that, then they will be able to heal themselves. They don't have to depend on others. So that was his attitude. And energy, without energy, creation is also not possible. In order to create, the energy is very much required. And in nature, there are lots of creative energies, because of which there is always creation taking place in nature. That creation may manifest or may not manifest, but it is all the time happening. And love is the quality which is absolutely required for any kind of creation. In fact, the energy of love is the creative energy. And energy of love has the healing capacity. The energy of love can also do lots of things. And so the energy, factor of energy, he gave a lot of emphasis after 1979. He talked quite a lot about the energy. In fact, when people say that what part of teaching of Krishnamurti is most authentic, so some people say that after 1929, some people say after 1933, then some people say after 1960. So just to settle the matter, Sunandaji asked Krishnaji directly, "Sir, if we consider all of your teaching during all that time period, so the teaching in which time period you will consider as most authentic?" So he said 1980 onwards. From 1980 onwards is his most authentic teaching. That means the expression of the teaching, most authentic. And therefore, that is what one should study or read first. and then revert back to the earlier works and so on. Because then you are not likely to misunderstand his expression, his earlier expressions. But if you start from the earliest period, then probably there may be a lot of confusion or misunderstanding. And 1980, so because he had reached the source of all energy, his expression became very sharp, very precise, accurate to the hilt, and without any confusion. So that is the time when he had lots of dialogues with David Bohm and some of the scientists and so on. So that is as far as the energy is concerned. Then he talks about the ground of existence, the origin of everything, living, non-living, and so on. But actually there is no such thing as non-living. It only appears to us as not living. But life pervades everything. Nothing is without life. And everything emerges out of that ground. Now, ground itself is not the manifestation, it is unmanifest. You cannot point out anything in the ground as existing. It is no thingness. That is how Krishnaji described it with his dialogue with David Bohm. And therefore, nothing much can be said about the ground except that that is the source of all that exists. So the universes, they manifest out of that ground, and after their life cycle is over, they again dissolve or go back to the ground. And ground is all that exists. So we can say that, yes, life which is living. So living will be always living, cannot be dead. And that living quality manifests in terms of universes, in terms of all the different forms, and those forms, they live. And then they have what is called as death. So it is the form that dies, but not the life which lives through that form. The life is always alive. There is no question of it coming to an end or being dead. And that confirms with this that whatever is born has to die. But the ground is not born. So there is no question of death of the ground. So in tradition also these concepts are in various ways expressed, and the ground is complete. Whatever you take out from the ground, it still remains complete. Whatever you add to it, it is still complete. It doesn't get affected by anything that's happening. So that is about the ground he has talked about. And then what is the quality of the brain, which functions from a different dimension? I think that is also quite an important point, because the brain, which is living the physical life with physical events and then responding to that, living its life completely based on the physical. So it is living a life of the physical dimension. But if there is a higher dimension, and as Krishnaji says, love is a totally different dimension, not the part of the physical dimension. And so what will be the quality of a brain which lives a life of that different dimension? So such a brain will be a perceptive brain. the action will not be based on analysis and logic. But does that mean that the action is illogical or irrational? So it is not so. The action is coming from insight, and insight is of the different dimension. So it is the insight which acts through the brain, and that action, when understood through the process of analysis, turns out to be completely logical and rational. So this is the interesting part of it. The action itself is not based on logic and rationality. It is not the outcome of that. The action is the outcome of the insight, the perception. And it happens in the physical plane or in the lower dimension. And that action, when you try to understand in terms of thought, in terms of knowledge, you find that that action turns out to be completely logical and rational. There is nothing illogical in it. And therefore, it turns out to be logically valid. So this is the quality of that brain. So such a brain is very receptive, still able to receive communication, able to have insight, and only that insight functions through that brain. Brain on its own does not initiate any action. So it is as if the higher is living or responding to the environment through the lower, which is the brain. So the brain doesn't initiate anything based on its memory or its knowledge, information, all these things. Whatever action initiates, it initiates from that insight, which functions through the brain and may use the information and knowledge stored in the brain if required to carry out that action, otherwise not used, and so on. So in this whole process, there is no place for the self, because we have said that the self appears only when the thought goes crooked, only when the thought doesn't function straight. While here there is no scope for the thought to go crooked, because the insight is operating. So that covers most of the essential part of Krishnamurti's teachings. So he is not talking just about awareness, attention, and just observe, and that's all that you are required to do in your life and forget the rest of the teaching. Because I find there are many groups who are still caught up in these concepts of awareness and attention, and they hardly do anything to establish order in their life or applying the teachings to their life. They may intellectually discuss, appreciate, intellectually explain, but no application to their day-to-day life. And then that doesn't lead anywhere. The person remains whatever he is. And then therefore, he is then deprived of all the higher possibilities which Krishna ji has pointed out through his teaching. I mean, all the higher qualities, including even the observation, attention, are not of the field of thought. They belong to the higher dimension. So love, compassion, intelligence, meditation, attention, awareness, mention anything, all that you are deprived of, and you are merely left with the ideas about these things which are formed by the thinker, by the thought. And so Krishnaji, in his last statement, he said, you people don't know what you have missed. That kind of statement he has made. So we'll be going through that in our session tomorrow, about the intelligence that functions through his body and what does it mean to live his teachings. So that part we'll be covering in tomorrow's talk in the evening. So as far as this session is concerned, I think we have more or less covered whatever we had planned to cover. But this is in a very, very broad way. I mean, we haven't filled up all the details. I mean, as you try to apply this to your life, you will come upon many details where you may need the further inquiry or some explanation or some pointers, but that is only when you apply it. Otherwise, this broad approach should be enough to give some understanding or some idea as to what Krishnaji has been talking about. So now the session is open for questions.
In morning session you mentioned when the seed comes you throw. Yes. And second part, when there is a sprouting, just let it grow. Yes. Yes. So in these two cases, the seed, incident, challenge, but the ground is so fertile. So not only so fertile, but it's a very deep driven. So means it will take the sprouting and flowering. Flowering, these two things is a bit confusing. Kindly explain.
Now, what is confusion about it? I mean, when the seed sprouts, grows as a sapling, then that sapling further grows into a plant, then it flowers, bears fruits, and then it withers. Therefore, then it is finished. Then what is the confusion about it?
Well, the flowering happened means the problem is solved, sir.
Yes.
For example, sir, young couple got married, sir. At the stage of seed level, nothing has been dropped. Now the flowering has started.
Yes.
Before it has flowered totally, there is a divorce.
Okay.
So it is complicated.
No problem.
So he should be, that means the couple should be educated that let it be flower more and more, then the problem will be solved. Means we fight, quarrel continuously.
So I think
Does it mean that's it?
what Ramarao was trying to ask
Yes.
was the pattern of sprouting is so strong. How do we get out before it starts sprouting?
Yeah. That is what I was also thinking, but he said no, not that. So
dormant
then I
state.
stopped there. No, that is the question, sir. What she wrote, that is the question. That is the question.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess correctly that was your question. But
Flowering is my
yes.
question.
Yeah. So both the questions we will consider together. Right. So does that mean that if you have conflict in your relationship, let it flower, let it grow, come to blows. And when you come to blows, then it will end. Maybe it will end in relationship. That is the end of relationship. So as you said, the divorce and all that.
Yes.
So that's not the approach. That's not the approach. It is the state of the mind. So, like say, now let us take this jealousy, right? Now, when we talk about seeds of jealousy, what do we mean by that? What are seeds of jealousy?
Comparison.
Yes. So, a psychological comparison is from what the jealousy arises. So, if I find myself psychologically comparing with other person, that means that is the seed. So, that is where I have to be alert and ask myself, why do I compare myself psychologically with another person? He has better mobile than me, right? And I don't have, I can't buy it, I can't afford it, so I feel jealous. And if that mobile he loses or breaks down, I feel happy. Right? It's like saying that a certain person is feeling very happy and you ask him, oh, why are you feeling so happy? No, I am feeling happy because my neighbor, he won the lottery. But your neighbor has won the lottery, but why are you happy about it? He said, no, he won the lottery, but he is unable to find the ticket. So I am feeling so happy. So that's the nature of jealousy. So why do I compare myself psychologically with another person?
So you can help him find the ticket.
Pardon?
Lottery ticket because you
Yeah.
can help him find the ticket.
No, that example is over, sir. You see, usually the difficulty with examples is that people end up in analyzing that example and keep on drawing many implications which were not meant when the example was given. So that's why Krishnaji avoided to give any example. He said, no example, sir, but watch. But here we are giving example just to make it little easier for you to see the point. But then instead of that, because you may say that, okay, after flowering of the jealousy or after flowering of the tree, it is throwing more seeds, right? And which again you will have to either remove or with it sprout again. So it is unending process. So that is what happens when you stretch the example too much. Examples are given only to make a point. And once you grasp that point, the function of the example is over. You can throw it away and not just start analyzing it. So the psychological comparison, right? Why do we do that? Is it because we are so used to comparison that we end up in psychological realm also comparing? Because you see, the thought being limited always wants to measure. Thought always wants to do measurement. And all measurement is based on comparison. You cannot measure anything without comparison. Even to measure a length, you have to compare it with a measuring tape. To measure the time, you have to compare it with the time in the watch. So, measurement is not possible without comparison. And if it is the property of thought always to measure, that means that it will always compare. So, there again then one has to ask where the comparison is valid and where it is not valid. So, in the physical realm, when you want to buy cloth or buy car or whatever it is, there the comparison is valid because you want to choose as per your requirements and therefore you compare. But psychologically, is there a need to compare? That means, why do I, by comparing myself with another person, why do I say that I am better than that person or I am inferior than that person, and what am I going to get from such a comparison? In fact, Krishna ji in his dialogue with students, right, he said it in a very nice way to the student, because writing exam and all those things, right? Then he is asking student, why do you compare? Why do you compare yourself with your friend or another student? So he says, to find out who is better, right? So he says that, but how does the comparison make you better or worse? Say you compare yourself with the other person and you say you are better or you are worse. But if you don't compare, are you better or are you worse? Then he says, no, I am what I am. So he says that is what is the fact. You are what you are. And the comparison doesn't change you in any way. Even if you compare yourself with your superior and say, in comparison to him you are inferior, or in comparison to her you are superior. So it's only in comparison the superiority and the inferiority exists. But if you don't compare yourself at all, then you are what you are. And what you are is the only fact. And feeling superior or inferior is an illusion, is the sense which has come out of that comparison. And so you will find that the thought comparing in psychological realm is playing havoc. The boss feels superior to the employees. A person doing a work on computer feels superior to a person who is just doing the cleaning work. The peon in the office is the most inferior person compared to everybody else in the office, and he gets the treatment according to that. Even in the school, when you compare one child with another child and say that, yes, this fellow is bright fellow. So bright fellow receives a different treatment and a dull fellow receives a different treatment. And all this is totally unnecessary. So if you see yourself comparing psychologically with another, that is the seed of jealousy. So, which means, can you stop comparing yourself? If you are able to stop, then you have thrown out the seeds. So jealousy will never arise in you. So that is how it is.
So one small point
Yes.
here, when you don't compare, you are what you are.
Right.
That gives you an opportunity to stay with what you are
Yes.
and understand yourself.
Yes. That's right.
You spoke about notebooks, sir. I don't know how to pronounce Mary Lutyens or Lutyens.
Yeah, you can say luteins or
Yeah.
luteins. Both are okay.
In her book, Mary Lutyens, in the chapter Years of Awakening, about in his earliest, Krishnaji in his early 20s, his experience under the puppetry, etc. And now, in his late 70s, that is 79 as you mentioned now, he spoke about his experiences. So, the first one we have to call it as mutation, as he has explained about mutation, and the second one we have to call as mutation, sir.
Yeah, you are talking in terms of mutation.
Yes, sir.
So it is the mutation of the brain
Yes, sir.
or brain cells. So that was in 22 when the process was happening.
Yeah.
The brain was being prepared so that it could, the consciousness of the world teacher could function through it. So that is the mutation.
Mutation.
Yeah. That is the mutation.
Second one you have explained.
The second thing is that post mutation, whatever life a person lives, that is not a static life. The unfoldment goes on. It doesn't stop with the mutation of the brain. Without the mutation, there was no unfoldment taking place. The brain was just living the routine mechanical life based on memory, experience, knowledge and all that. So he was living through that cycle, right? Which is the event happening, going through that event is experience, from that experience knowledge stored in the memory, memory responding to the next event in the form of thought, and through that response creating next experience, going through it. So it was living through that cycle before the mutation. But after the mutation, that cycle is broken. The knowledge doesn't have much important role. The essential is retained, unessential is just wiped out. And therefore now the real unfolding starts, which is the opening of a different dimension. And just as we have said that the awareness deepens, initially it is quite vague, but as it deepens, you start seeing more details. It's like when you open your eyes, there is a dazzling light, so much brightness that you are unable to make out anything. But as your eyes get used to that brightness, then you start seeing things in that light. And then you start making out, okay, there is this, there is that, and all those things. And then as your eyes are completely comfortable with that kind of brightness, then you see all the details and so on. So in this case, the same, when the brain unfolds, so much is there, and that unfoldment has to deepen, and you see more things. And then it's like going deeper and deeper, and as you go deep, more and more things are visible, the more and more beauty, and therefore you start realizing how deep the life is. And whatever you discover in that discovered thing feels as more real than what you were before or what was there before. And therefore you happen to say that, yes, this is the thing, this is what life is, not what I was considering before. But this feeling happens again and again with the new discoveries as the unfoldment happens. So it's not, the mutation is not the end, is not the final point. It is just the beginning of the real unfoldment. And so Krishnamurti, even after that 22 experience, unfoldment didn't stop, it continued. And inquiry continued, the deepening of the teachings, the understanding of the teachings. And in 79, he had that experience of reaching the source of all energy. And beyond that also, so reaching source of all energy was not the end in itself. The unfolding continued further. So probably if Krishnaji were alive today, maybe he would have talked about something totally different or something more than what we have heard him as talking. So the life is like that. It's never static.
So this unfolding, this mutation and unfolding, what are some key practices? You've spoken about this at length already, but just to summarize, what are some key practices people like us can do individually and as a group to actually experience this rather than just talk about it, like you referred to at the end?
That's I mean, the first thing is to examine whether one is living one's life in a mechanical way, a routine way. Because a routine makes life easier for the brain. It doesn't have to much work on itself, just have to follow routine. And then it is free to do whatever it wants to do, all its indulgences, pursuit of pleasure and whatever it is, it goes after that and doesn't have to. So that is the first thing. Second thing is, do you do things attentively or you just do them in whatever way you can? Probably you will find that when you are not interested in what you are doing, you are likely to do it either in a casual way or you are likely to do it without taking much interest. Focus is more to finish it somehow and get rid of it rather than doing it thoroughly. So in all this process, what is happening is that you are creating tendencies in your brain to be in that state. For example, if you are doing things inattentively, right, without paying much attention, then doing things inattentively, that means the inattention becomes your habit. Inattention becomes your tendency. So even when you want to pay attention, you will find that you are not able to pay attention. The same inattention creeps in. And you can very commonly observe this in students preparing for the exam, trying to read from the book. And as they pay attention to read from the book, they find that they are become inattentive. The brain is thinking of something else, right? Only the eyes are moving over the text, but nothing is going in the brain. And after a while, they will realize, oh, he has read the pages, but doesn't remember anything what is written in that pages. So again, he has to start all over again. So that is a very common experience we see. So which means that what you do is not important. How you do it is most important. If you do it attentively, then attention becomes your tendency. Attention becomes the quality of your life. And then that same quality you can apply it to anything that you do, and it will be done correctly. But usually we evaluate things, and then things which are not important for us, we just do them casually or not do it or ignore them and so on. But that then becomes the state of our mind.
But sir, that doing things attentively, can that also become a habit?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that can attention become a habit? Right? It's an interesting question. Yes.
Visual attention can become a
Can attention become a habit? Right? How does it sound?
I think so, yes.
It is the inattention that becomes the habit, not the attention.
artificial attention can become the habit, sir.
No, not. What do you mean by artificial attention?
Krishnamurti has used this word.
Yeah?
He has used it.
Yeah. No, but what is it?
Through observance, sir. Attention through observance.
Yeah, if observer is trying to attend, right? Yeah, that is actually, is it attention? The observer trying to attend, right? So it is actually concentration. The observer trying to attend is concentration, because the attention for the observer is focusing everything on one object to the exclusion of everything else. And that is what it is trying to do. But what happens is that everything else is also seeking the attention. That also needs the attention. So it keeps on intruding this concentration. So then he ends up in concentration, distraction, concentration, distraction. And that process is quite tiring. I mean, when a person is caught up in that, he will find his brain will get fatigued and he will feel heavy head or sometimes headache. And I have seen people developing acidity out of this. So then it is time to stop that activity and forget about attention or inattention and just be quiet for some time, and maybe later on you can come back to this attention. So doing things attentively. Third aspect is, because attention is energy and you can't afford to waste energy, so as you live your day-to-day life, you have to find out, are you wasting your energy? So which means that you have to examine all your activities and find out whether there are any redundant activities, the activities which actually you are just doing and which actually don't matter. Playing games on the mobile, chatting, so many things are there. I'm not saying that one should not do that, but I'm just pointing out some examples where a lot of energy is being spent, and one has to ask whether it is worth spending all that energy. And if it is not, then maybe one has to stop. Then other factor is the insensitivity. If you are doing things which make you insensitive, then that is what you have to watch and work on yourself so that you don't desensitize yourself. Because sensitivity is utterly important. Without sensitivity, it is just like being blind. If you are insensitive, that means you are almost blind. Many things will go unnoticed. So these are few points. Maybe we will talk about more such points when we talk about living the teachings, which is the topic for tomorrow's session. Yeah, Vipla, go ahead.
Person, a primitive person, like we are thinking like a primitive person. There is a tree which is giving food to me, like fruits or anything for my survival. And there is a wild animal there, it is threatening me for my life. And also same way, I am dealing with a violent person. These all are my, I faced a violent person. Next time when I am dealing with him, violent and calm person, a different kind of person, a different kind of experiences. Is it accumulation or on its own it is memorizing in our brain? And I am operating from that. If I go this side, I get fruit. If I go this side, there is a lion or a tiger. And I deal with this person who is violent, then based on my memory, whatever, I don't know, I am a primitive person. I want to treat him differently. You are a calm person, then my dealing is different with you. Is it based on accumulation or whatever, what are we talking?
Yes, my response is based on my conditioning, my accumulated memory. I have lived my life 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, whatever it is. In those 40 years, I have accumulated lot of memory, lot of knowledge, information, and that is the basis of my action. So if a violent person comes before me, right, my response will be based on my accumulated knowledge. If my accumulated knowledge says that fight with him, I will fight. If my accumulated knowledge says that no point in fighting with that man, just avoid him, so I will avoid. So whatever I do vis-a-vis that person is based on my accumulated knowledge. and it may not be based on what the situation demands. Situation may be demanding something totally different, but I am not able to find that out because my response is only based on my knowledge, and my database may not have any solution for that situation, and therefore I may end up in acting wrongly and creating consequences. So does that answer your question? That means you wanted to ask something else.
He said, he has used the word primitive man, sir.
Now, where does the primitive man come from?
Since our friends not come out from the primitive
No,
method.
You are bringing in primitive man and you are bringing in some animal. So what is that? I mean, what exactly you are trying to say?
So this accumulation, from there it comes. For food,
Accumulation comes through my own life. Whatever life I have lived, through that life I have accumulated. The accumulation comes through that. If I don't live, the accumulation also doesn't come.
I'm not doing intentionally.
No, you may not be doing intentionally, but the accumulation will happen.
Psychologically, we are like a primitive man. Despite so much of
Why are you
progress,
saying that?
the physical.
Now let us not interpret what he is trying to say. You see, let him come out clearly what he wants to say, right? Otherwise, we will be just speculating, extrapolating, and it will become an imaginary discussion.
As you said, not every time fight with a violent person. If I'm looking at violent person, accidentally, I keep quiet. If somebody is like calm, I'll ask a question, I will get some clarification from it. Is it wrong, sir?
No,
If I keep quiet, is it intelligence or operating from accumulation?
It depends on what your database tells you. If your database says that if you behave calmly with a violent person, then that is wrong. You should fight with him, right? Then that action will be wrong. If your database says that no, you have to keep calm, don't fight the violent person, avoid him, and that is the right action, then it is right according to your database. But the point here is not right or wrong according to a particular database, right or wrong according to the situation. The right and wrong according to situation will be based on whether the action is able to meet the situation completely and resolve it. Then that action is the correct action or right action. If it is not able to meet the situation and not able to resolve it, then it is not a right action. So to find out what is the right action, one has to keep aside one's database and look at the situation afresh and understand it. In fact, the interesting point is, if you are capable of paying immediate attention and learn what is the right response in that situation, then you don't have to remember anything. You don't need a database for that. So that is what is expected. But if you do not have that kind of capacity, then you are gathering all kind of knowledge, this and this, hoping that at least that will help you to respond to the situation. Yes.
When I'm in life-threatening situation like starving for a long time or dealing with wild animal, I'm paying full attention. As Kay said, my house is burning. My action is with full attentiveness. But when come to dealing with other things, other than this, I'm inattentive. What?
Yeah, that is because of the interest. See, attention is the energy, and energy flows in the direction of interest. If you are interested in something, the energy will flow there. You will attend to it or you will do something about it. If you are not interested, energy will flow away from it. You will ignore it, and so on. And interest itself is not permanent. It keeps on changing, shifting. So what makes this change and shift? That is your database. That will keep on shifting it or changing it. Because today I may be interested in something, tomorrow I may be interested in completely different thing. So all this play is going on, and in this play you can be aware of the content of your database. And if you are aware of the content of your database, then you can question why that content is there. Where did you pick it from? And in what way it is useful? And if it is not useful, then why are you just carrying with it? So that is where the self-inquiry then begins.
Sir, you talked of insight, but somewhere where the stage is stopped. If you make a conclusion out of the insight, you are walking further inside. Is that
Actually, concluding is the end of insight. The insight is gone. But if you are aware of the conclusion, and see, then the insight may be back. So insight doesn't, actually you see, the thought is always trying to conclude about anything. The property of thought itself is such that without concluding, it doesn't feel that it has understood. Its understanding is always in terms of conclusion. So even in the discussion, if the discussion doesn't end with some conclusion, the participants feel that, oh, today's discussion could not conclude. It remained inconclusive. It should have continued for some more time. Yes. So that is the nature of this concrete mind, that it always understands things in terms of ideas, images, symbols, conclusions, and out of every observation, it has to conclude. Otherwise, it feels that it hasn't observed at all. So, to be aware of this limitation of thought, I mean, in fact, we began today's session with the thought, its nature and limitation. So, this is a major limitation of thought, that it always understands things in terms of images and pictures and conclusions, and therefore always limits itself, because whatever is not captured in that image or in that conclusion is missed. It will say that it doesn't understand. But insight doesn't depend on that. Yes.
Sir, how to differentiate between accumulated actual memory and accumulated psychological memory? If I meet a violent person to behave violently always.
So you are asking how to differentiate between actual memory and psychological memory. How to distinguish? I mean, on what basis you say this is psychological memory and this is factual memory? Right? Now the factual memory will have only the informational content. The content which is knowledge, information, all these things. But psychological memory will have a psychological component associated with it, which is the sensation, the feelings, the emotions, all that. So if you get emotionally moved when you recall certain memory, then that is a psychological memory. And if you don't get emotionally moved, then that is a factual memory. Like say 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, doesn't move you emotionally, right?
But the person who shouts at you, they have a factual memory and psychological together intertwined.
Yes.
So how to make him afresh?
The factual memory is that he has shouted at you. Factual memory is that you felt bad. That is also factual because you actually felt bad, right? But the actual feeling of bad, right, through the memory, is the psychological memory.
That both are intertwined.
Yeah, they are intertwined. As you said, they are all so much intertwined that many times it is very, very difficult to pinpoint what is factual and what is psychological.
What is intelligence in it? Meeting that person, we use factual memory or cooperation?
No, you use the total memory, which is the entanglement of factual and psychological, both. Because, you don't meet him afresh in the sense, if he has hurt you, and next time you see him approaching you, either you avoid, you change your path, go the other way, right? Or if you are not able to change the path, you show as if you have not seen him, and you just pass by him, right? Or even that is not possible, then you just say bye or hi and bye immediately and just go away. So anyway, I think Shri Ram wants to ask something.
So you spoke about, just a clarification, I think. You spoke about death. Normally when a person dies, nobody keeps in his house. A few hours only, just take him out. You keep him. The organism starts producing some insects or whatever. So it never dies. Personal experience, I must say, never dies. Same time, when you sit with a person, I happen to be in some foundations and other things, when you ask him the last stages, so he says that something is going away, maybe astral something. So, I just want to know, my experience is, neither we are born nor we die. So where is the question of death? So how to understand more about it? Because I went into Boga Siddhar and all, Tiruvannamalai, which is a famous, like you spoke about something that he knows, Krishnaji knows that healing. So people say he's here visible, he's there visible. So is it, can you, what is your experience in it, sir?
No, I don't have much experience in that, but I have studied it to some extent, and we can talk on that basis. And whatever I have studied is from the sources who have actually experimented with this. So, what is it that dies? Now, a person stops interacting with the environment. There is no conscious activity taking place through that person. Right? So, such a person we mostly consider as dead. Now, in that also, there are two possibilities. One is that his heart is functioning, right? Every part of the body is functioning. It's only the brain which is not functioning, because no conscious activity is taking place, but the body is fully alive. Right? So, such a person we say is in a state of coma. That body is still alive and person is not able to function through it. The other possibility is that the heart has stopped, the bodily functions have stopped, and therefore, for all practical purposes, the body is dead. The body as that being is dead, because that being is no longer able to interact with the environment through that body. But what about the cells in the body? The cells are still alive, right? And therefore, the body is not completely dead yet. The cells in the body are still alive and they are doing their function. So, as long as they are able to derive their food from that body, they will remain alive. So, that is why they say that many times you keep a dead body and after a couple of days you will find the beard has grown or nails have grown and those kinds of things. So, that is because the cells are still alive and they are doing their function, and therefore, you say It's only when the cells also start dying, right? That is where the process of decay starts. So the body starts decaying, and then there will be foul smell and all those things. So that means then the body is really coming to death. That means no cell, nothing will be alive. It will be total death. So now the person who was living through that body, the consciousness, which was made up of its content, what has happened to it? Right? So the content of consciousness has left the body. It is no longer able to express itself through that body. It is no longer able to use that body for its expression. So it has left. But that content of consciousness still continues. It hasn't died. It continues. And it continues with all its identity and with everything intact. So which means that the only difference is that the person doesn't have a physical body, but he has his identity in terms of the content of consciousness. So all the things which he was psychologically experiencing are very much there, alive, and he is able to experience that. But then whatever thing requires the physical body to experience, that he is not able to experience. So there is what is called as the psychological starvation, right? Like say the person is very much fond of drinking alcohol and feeling the kick or the nasha of that drinking. And so even after death, that hunger or that thirst for alcohol continues. But now he can't drink the alcohol because he doesn't have the body. And therefore he can't fulfill that thirst. So he will keep on suffering. He wants to drink alcohol, but he can't. And therefore all that intensity of wanting to drink, he has to live with that because he can't do anything else. He can't drink. And so such intensity, then many times they say that such psychological content then tries to use somebody else's body in order to experience that drinking of alcohol. So then you have these spirits and all those things. So they will try to occupy the body of another drunkard and through that try to experience this alcohol and all these things. So in this, what hint we get is that if we have very strong desires of any kind, and if they need the body for fulfillment, it is better we work out those desires before our death. Otherwise, you are going to be in trouble. That's why I mean that joke that if I am dead, why do I feel so horrible? So it's actually an example of this kind of state, that if the desires which can be fulfilled through the body, if they are not worked out when you are still in the physical body, then you are going to be in difficulty. So that's why they say that as the person grows old, most of his desires are worked out. Very few maybe, or very faintly they may be there. So such persons, after living their full physical life, if they die, they don't have much problem in the other world. But people who die of young age or when their life is in full blast of these desires and all these things, they suffer quite a lot when they die, because all their unfulfilled desires, and they have lost the means of fulfillment, and so they are in real trouble.
Feeling of horrible after death comes from the astral plane.
Yes.
Another question. The feet of the master that book is written by Krishnaji in his earlier years.
Yes.
So should we not read that book because
No, no, you should read one.
mentioned to follow the teachings after 1980?
No, 1980 teaching, if you understand, then you will be able to understand at the feet of the master correctly. Otherwise, there may be some confusion that in this book says this, and then, like say, this book talks about master, and Krishna says there is no guru, right? All those things will happen. But if you understand his teachings, the later teachings properly, then you are able to look at this book also in a correct way, and then just take the essential.
How do we find the 1980?
Yeah, they are all there on the YouTube. Watch any video dated 1980 onwards.
Especially the series, sir, like ending of
If you
series.
listen to series of talks, say Sanan 1980, Sanan 1981, 82, like that, they are very good. So those, or Brockwood Park or Ojai, or even India also. Yeah, 1980 onwards, you watch any video, they are very interesting.
If you are suffering, don't escape from suffering, resist.
Yes.
Some bodily ailment is there. Then does it mean that you should not go to any doctor or something like that?
No, it doesn't mean that. You see, usually with us, what happens is that even with the slightest pain, we immediately want to get rid of it and start taking medicines or going to doctor and all these things. But we don't give any time for the body to recover from that pain. You see, any kind of pain occurs due to some kind of imbalance in the body. And if you give some time to the body to recover that imbalance, then you may not have to take any medicine at all. It's only when you find that body is not able to recover its balance, right? Then probably you need some therapy. Then you go to doctor or take some medicine, all these things. But I think it is always good to give some time and observe what is happening. Even the pain you can observe and then see. And then from that observation you may come to the solution. You will be able to find out whether you need the medicine or you don't need the medicine. And then you can go accordingly.
So what's the name of the book which tells us how to apply the things written at the feet of the masters?
Oh, that is the Talks on the Path of Occultism, Volume 1.
So it tells us how to follow the...
Yeah, no, what it does is that it takes a statement from at the feet of the master, and then CWL and Annie Besant, they explain that statement in theosophical knowledge, in terms of theosophical knowledge, or in terms of what it means in day-to-day life context. So that is how that book goes. So the original at the feet of the master is a very small book, but this is a big volume because those are the commentaries, and it always happens that commentaries are always bigger than the original because a lot of explanation goes in that.
Mainly it focuses on what qualities you need
Yes.
to be
Yes.
disciplined guru should act on.
Right. That's a useful book.
The other book is spoke about some kingdom of
happiness.
happiness. Kingdom of happiness by Literature.
No, it's by Krishnamurti.
By Krishnamurti.
Kingdom of happiness, self-preparation, the search, the path, come away, and there are few more. They are all by Krishnamurti.
This more esotericism is there in it.
No. It is just the talks given to the persons who were preparing themselves to receive the world teacher. That means how should one prepare oneself so that one is capable of studying or understanding or receiving what the world teacher was going to say. So in short, the preparing yourself to understand Krishnamurti's teaching.
But you said whether a person like Krishnamurti will not come anytime soon. Maybe after
Next several centuries, that is Krishnamurti himself has said that for at least many more centuries there won't be any example of that intelligence manifesting through human body.
So do we really need to work then apply?
Yeah. That we are going to talk about tomorrow. That is the tomorrow's topic. We can't finish it today, then we have nothing to talk about. tomorrow.
What's stopping any one of us in this room from blossoming to that level?
Yeah, actually, you see, the kind of energy that is required to blossom to that level. If you are able to gather that much of energy, then it is possible for any person to liberate here and now without going through any practices, without going through anything. But are we capable of having that kind of energy? Now, the kind of energy Krishnaji has talked about, he said it was like a 12-cylinder engine. 12-cylinder engine. Now, if you have that kind of energy in your body will shatter to pieces. It just can't withstand that kind of energy. And therefore, all this thing is required then. Through living your life, you have to build up that strength. You have to gather your energy, and these are time-taking things. So you can't immediately liberate yourself. And anyway, when you compress too much of energy in a short space, it explodes. It can't. So that's why they said that the preparation of Krishnamurti's body was a very, very delicate process, and they had to ensure that they doesn't explode.
There we don't call it conditioning. There we don't call it as conditioning.
No. You can call it as conditioning. You can say that the body had to be conditioned to enable it to express world teacher's consciousness. Yes. So there the conditioning is used in a different word. It is like you condition the air through air conditioning, right? So that is that kind of conditioning, not the conditioning in the sense of limiting. Yeah, conditioning the hair, yes.
Vimla Thakur, who was totally into Krishna's teachings, Vimla Thakur was totally into Krishna's teachings and who was also healed by Krishna, what I read in the books. Also, I watched many videos of hers. I have a feeling that she has undergone mutation, the mutation which Krishnaji speaks, without somebody preparing her body and without the help of, I don't know what, but invisible masters like Marci, Moria, Kutumi, etc. What has actually might have happened to her?
I don't know, sir. I have not read about what happened to her and all those things.
Because you spoke about the energy that explodes and there's a possibility. Yes.
But I don't know whether energy exploded through her or what happened to her and all those things. And also there are so many assumptions that she has understood case teachings, she was liberated or transformed.
She was confident.
Yeah.
She was,
Yeah.
yes, out.
Yes. So there are all those things because you already assumed so many things, therefore it's difficult to say anything about it. But you can read her biography written by Kaisar Irani. Kaisar Irani has written Vimla Thakur's biography, and in that biography you will find answer to all your questions, what you have asked just now. Yeah. I don't want to answer them because they are available in printed form.
Very controversial.
Yes.
Controversial.
Sir, even Upul Jaigar was last week, if I am right.
I don't think we should.
Yeah. See, all happened.
Yeah, we are nobody to judge
Yeah.
those things. So anyway, but Krishnaji discouraged the study centers from keeping Vimlaji's books in the study center library. He has clearly mentioned it that no books of Vimlaji should be kept in the study center library. So two persons he mentioned, one is the Osho, other is Vimla Thakur. Yes. no books of this person should be kept in Krishnamurti Study Center library.
Whose books are allowed, sir? Whose books are allowed?
You can keep Krishnamurti's books, or you can keep the authentic scriptures. That means if you want to keep Upanishads, keep the authentic version, not the commentaries. And some of the saints, you can keep their authentic versions of their works. Raman Maharshi, or you can, or even Nareshwar, Tukaram, those saints also. The original ones only.
Some funny things happen, sir. I went to Ramachandra Mission.
Vedas you want to keep also the original version of Vedas.
I went to Ramachandra Mission because my wife is Ramachandra meditator, etc. Their methods, etc. Is that problem, sir? I went to library, sir. Big library. You must have heard about this Ramachandra Mission. Kanara Center, they call it. The biggest meditation center in the world, etc. Near Shamshabad Airport. I have found Osho. I counted 39 books of Osho, and I searched for Krishnaji's books because I love Krishnaji's book. Not a one. Then I went to librarian, very senior person in that meditation, etc. He said, Krishnaji said there is no guru and there is no disciple, but we have guru and we have disciple. So we have not kept his books. I think there is a logic in that actually.
Yeah, he was clear at least.
He's very clear.
In his thought, yes.
And he's very mature person, I can tell. Very interesting.
At least he was clear in his thoughts, so that's okay.
That's sharing.
Yeah. That's okay. So our session is over, no?
So just I want to ask you, the whole life K was telling that you not be any authority or guru or all those things. But the whole thing from 47 to 1985, knowingly or unknowingly, the kingdom has been formed. So how we have to take it?
No, authority as far as the teaching is concerned, he said no authority. So including your own authority. In the sense that if you come to some conclusion vis-a-vis the teaching, then that conclusion becomes your authority. So even that authority, he said, you have to negate. And then considering Krishnamurti himself as authority, he said that is the first thing you should negate. He is not the authority. But he is inviting you to explore with him, inquire and come to the understanding. So authority in spiritual matters, he totally negated. Doesn't matter whose authority, even your own authority also he negated, because a person could be deceived, and that deception itself, because it has come from him, he may take it as an authority or as the validity, and therefore just follow it. So even that he said you have to question. So authority had no place in his, but there is what is called as the authenticity. Why authenticity is required is, there is so much material around you and you have such a limited time of your life. Now to find out which material is likely to contain fragments of truth, you will have to go through all of that, examine it and all those things, and you don't have time. By the time you finish these, even to understand one saint is a life-consuming task, and there are so many, you simply don't have time. So therefore, you have to make a choice. Now choice should be based on the authenticity. Authenticity means you have to find out which source is likely to contain the real fragments of truth or real truth. And therefore then you have to go a little bit into the background, or maybe you have to just take some samples from those works and see whether it makes any sense and so on. Or by looking at the life of the promoters of that knowledge You can see whether it is worth going through it and so on. So on that basis, if you select, then after selection, you study it, go through it, put all your energy into it, and if it really has some truth, it will withstand. You have to question it, doubt it, and the truth has to withstand all that. And it has to cover the whole of your life. It should not happen that I have a problem in this aspect in my life and is not covered by so and so's teaching. Then that means the teaching is not valid. It is only partial. So then you have to decide whether you want to follow this partial teaching or you should go for something very real. So what I find, according to my study, that Krishnamurti's teaching, right, covers the whole of life. I have not found any issue or any situation not being resolved or tackled through these teachings. It's possible to approach any situation through this teaching and resolve it. And to some extent, I also find the theosophical literature capable of this. But it has to be combined with Krishnamurti's teaching. If you go purely by theosophy, then there are quite chances or possibilities of getting misled. But in the light of this teaching, then you will be able to see the truth in the this theosophical literature also. So you will not be deceived. So what actually Krishnaji has done is that he has tried to awaken our intelligence, open our eyes, enable ourselves, so that we ourselves are able to see through the things and take our own decisions. So that way, that is very useful.
So you can say that it is a complementary to theosophy. Complementary to theosophy.
Yeah, I mean it is complementary to every teaching in the sense that once you understand what Krishnamurti is talking about, then it becomes easier for you to understand what is Bhagavad Gita, what is Upanishad, what is theosophy, or for that matter even Bible and Quran and all those things. So from all these resources, you will be able to take out that which is truthful, which is factual, and then all the rest you will be able to discard as unnecessary or unessential. So that is the capability that gives. So in tradition also they call as Nirakshira Viveka. That means they say the Hamsa, the swan, if you mix milk and water and put it before the swan, it is able to take out only the milk and leave the water. So that is called in Sanskrit as Nirakshira Viveka. So that is the discrimination which the At the Feet of the Master talks about. So I think we have come to the end of this session, and these points we will further follow up in tomorrow's dialogue in the evening. So now you can have your sandwich and enjoy.
Thank you.